Mark, for that introduction. Hopefully the screen will show my PowerPoint in a moment. There we go. All right, so I'm going to be presenting on a famous paradox in the philosophy of science called the paradox of the ravens. There are a couple of preliminary notions to get on the table before I begin giving you the details of the paradox. So I'm sure that most of you are familiar with the idea of a scientific hypothesis. By that I mean something like a guess or even a theory about some phenomenon in nature. One popular way, the most common way probably, to test a hypothesis is to make some kind of observation about something that it predicts. So if my hypothesis is Mark Lang actually has a policy of striking the gong whenever a speaker exceeds 15 minutes, I could test this by extending my talk to 16 minutes and observing whether or not Mark strikes the gong. If he does hit the gong, that should confirm my hypothesis. And if he doesn't, it should disconfirm my hypothesis. But the notion of confirmation I'm using here is incremental confirmation. According to the idea that hypotheses can be confirmed incrementally, an observation that accords with a hypothesis should increase or decrease our confidence in the hypothesis to some degree. It should make us more confident than we were, but that doesn't mean that it makes us absolutely confident. So if Mark does strike the gong when my talk hits the 16-minute mark, that doesn't prove it. It just gives us some more confidence, or it should give us some more confidence that my hypothesis is true. All right, so there's incremental confirmation. Now, let's get the paradox on the table. So, in the paradox of the ravens, there are three claims or ideas that generate a contradiction. That's what a paradox is. It's when you have some plausible seeming statements that, taken together, give some kind of contradiction or problem. It's called the paradox of the ravens because the philosopher of science who introduced the paradox, M.Phil, happened to choose ravens as his example. There's nothing special about ravens. It could be the paradox of the flamingos if you wanted. All that matters is that the hypothesis in question fits a very simple shape that I will outline in a moment. So the first of the claims that gives rise to this paradox is the idea that when you have a general hypothesis of the form all f's are g's, finding a particular f that is a g is some evidence in favor of that hypothesis. We can call this instance confirmation. Lots of hypotheses take this general form. Your hypothesis might be that all reptiles are cold-blooded, or that all metals conduct electricity, or that all Pikachu are yellow, if you're playing as much Pokemon Go as I am. So when you find a particular reptile, say, that is cold-blooded, you have incrementally increased your confidence in the hypothesis. You've incrementally confirmed the hypothesis. Another way to put this simple point is that positive instances confirm general hypotheses. This probably strikes you as incredibly plausible. It should, maybe even obvious, but it gets tricky, so hang on. So the next second idea that contributes to the paradox is called the equivalence condition. So the equivalence condition says that whenever two hypotheses are equivalent, or whenever they say exactly the same thing about the world, then any observation that confirms one of the hypotheses also confirms the other. So here's an example that I've borrowed from our illustrious chair, Mark Lang. So suppose that you have hypothesis A, all diamonds are made entirely out of carbon, and then you also consider hypothesis B, carbon is what all diamonds are made entirely out of. These hypotheses are obviously equivalent. They mean exactly the same thing. So according to the equivalence condition, any observation we make that confirms the first will also confirm the second. It's going to tell us that an instance of a diamond made entirely out of carbon confirms both in this case. This should also strike you as pretty obviously right. Now, there's a third idea that contributes to the paradox, and that's a principle that you learn in an introductory logic course if you took one here at UNC. So this is the claim that if you have the claim all f's are g's, that claim is logically equivalent to the claim all non-g's are non-f's. So with M.Phil's raven example, that means that all ravens are black is logically equivalent to the claim that all black things are non-ravens. Think of it this way. Both of these hypotheses tell you that there's something that's not possible. They rule out a state of affairs. The first hypothesis, all ravens are black, can be paraphrased as, you're never going to find a raven that's not black. That's not a possibility, they don't exist. And the second hypothesis, all non-black things are non-ravens, really tells you the same thing. It tells you that if you find a non-black thing, it's not going to be a raven. In other words, you're never going to find something that is both a raven and non-black. So if both of these hypotheses are equivalent to that claim, that this is an impossible state of affairs, they must be equivalent to each other. So these hypotheses have the same meaning. So let's go through it with a Pokemon example. So all Pikachus are yellow is equivalent to all non-yellow things are non-Pikachu. They both say you're not going to find a non-yellow Pikachu. By the way, the plural of Pikachu is Pikachu. Okay, now that we have all the claims on the table that generate the paradox, let me show you how the paradox arises. So consider the hypothesis that all non-black things are ravens. Because of instance confirmation, we know that this will be confirmed when we find a non-raven that is non-black. For example, we might find this. Okay, so this is not black, and it's not a raven. In fact, it's a shoe. It's mostly white and with some Carolina blue and navy on there. This shoe is a positive instance of the hypothesis all non-black things are non-ravens. Observing the shoe confirms that hypothesis, nothing surprising here. But it starts to get a little weird because the equivalence condition tells us that any hypothesis that is equivalent to all non-black things are non-ravens will also be confirmed by this shoe. And we have on the table the claim that all ravens are black is equivalent to all non-black things are non-ravens. So we get the perhaps unsettling conclusion that this shoe also confirms all ravens are black. Here's where we get something that sounds pretty surprising, you might even say implausible. The idea that we can test and even gather evidence for the hypothesis all ravens are black, like at the mall in a shoe store, seems wrong, right? So we can confirm it not just by going outside to places like this, but also to places like that. And that's not what we expect for thinking about scientific methodology. I'm guessing it seems to you, I'm hoping it seems to you like something has gone awry here. It strikes most people that way. Let's run through it one more time with my Pokemon example. So say you have the hypothesis on the table that all Pikachu are yellow. This is logically equivalent to the hypothesis all non-yellow things are non-Pikachu. Given the equivalence condition, any hypothesis that confirms one of these must confirm the other. So you see a green Bulbasaur outside in nature, and that observation counts as confirming your hypothesis all Pikachu are yellow. So by the simple rules I've laid out, it seems like you can increase your confidence in a hypothesis about Pikachu without encountering any Pikachu. That seems wrong. So I told you a moment ago that a paradox gives rise to a kind of contradiction. The contradiction here is between these three simple claims and our common sense understanding about how scientific practice should go. Namely that you need to see some ravens to confirm hypotheses about ravens, or see some Pikachu to confirm hypotheses about Pikachu. Okay, so now you're feeling the puzzlement. Let me, in the few moments I have left, give you one solution to the paradox. So quite a few attempts have been made to solve this paradox. Much ink in the philosophy of science has been spilled about it. This is a solution, an attempted solution, that doesn't actually reject any of the three conditions I gave you. It tries to make the conclusion seem a little bit less terrible. So this response is actually given by Janina Hesias and Lindenbaum, who was a Polish mathematician and philosopher. She said, let's assess the situation. So we have some relevant background information that will help us understand why the contradiction here between our common sense ideas shouldn't really bother us. So she says the background knowledge we have is that the number of ravens in the world is way smaller than the number of non-black things, much, much smaller. And she says that strictly speaking, if we could check every non-black thing, we could fully verify the hypothesis that all ravens are black. So if we checked not just all the non-black shoes, but also all the non-black ice cream trucks and koala bears and everything else that's not black, we really would be entitled to a high degree of confidence in the hypothesis all ravens are black, even without checking any ravens. And likewise, another way to get that high degree of confidence would be to check every raven. So we could also verify the hypothesis that way. These are two ways of going about the same confirmatory task. But what we know is that one of these tasks is going to be much harder to accomplish than another. It's going to take much more checking. So the sensible place to start is obviously with the ravens and not with the non-black things. So if you think of it this way, so each raven we check should be thought of as 1 over r of the total task of checking all the ravens, and each non-black thing is 1 over n of the total task of checking all the ravens. Obviously, we know that 1 over r will be a much greater confirmatory oomph than 1 over n, right? So each raven confirms the hypothesis to a much higher degree than each non-black non-raven. So the solution says, yeah, a white shoe does confirm the hypothesis that all ravens are black, but that doesn't mean we should be doing ornithology at the mall. We're going to get way more confirmation from checking ravens than we are from checking non-black things. This explains why it sounds so preposterous to say that a white shoe confirms the raven hypothesis, because checking white shoes to learn about ravens is a huge waste of time. It's a terrible strategy, so we should stick with the more traditional methods of learning about ravens. This is a pretty good shot, I think, at solving the puzzle. Unfortunately, it hasn't proven completely satisfactory to philosophers of science. I'll give you just one response to this solution before I conclude. So presumably, the fraction of total ravens we've observed is actually pretty small when you're considering all the ravens that exist now and have ever existed. That's what the hypothesis is about, after all. So if that's very small, then it's going to look like we've done a very small portion of the job, even if we do the best we can at checking ravens. Yet, scientists tend to be pretty confident about their hypothesis all ravens are black, maybe even close to 100% confident in the hypothesis. I hear there are albino ravens, but we'll just set that to the side. So we need an account that explains why scientists are still justified in being highly confident in the truth of their hypotheses, even though they've only completed a small portion of the overall job. So that's the puzzle that is left. Fortunately, there's a lot that's been said in response to this, so if you want to know more about ravens, you should take a philosophy of science class. Thank you very much.